Today's daf we're going to be learning is Ketubot, Daf Memvav. This month's learning is dedicated to Tzvi Landau by his wife Julie Landau in honor of their wedding anniversary. Your joyful approach to Jewish learning and observance has always inspired me. Ve'erestich li la'olam. This week's learning is sponsored by Ilana and Daniel Storch and family. We dedicate our week of learning with love for Ilana Chana Bat Gila Brainala as we continue to daven Belev Maleh for your full and complete recovery. And this week's learning is sponsored for the Refuah Shlema of Yehoshua Dov ben Gittel Saba. This week's learning is dedicated with a love for Ilana Chana Bat Gila Brainala as we continue to daven daily Belev Maleh for your full and complete recovery from Ilana and Daniel Storch and family. Wishing you all the best of Refuah Shlema. We're now going to start with the bottom of Memhei Amud Bet, where we finished off. We finished yesterday's Shiur. We had a Braita with two different versions of whether, according to Tanakh, the difference between if Baal or lo Baal. If you remember, Tanakhama didn't distinguish whether the husband, in fact, before he accuses his wife, actually has relations with her after they got married, or is it also applicable in the event when they didn't have relations? So again, the simple reading of the verses is that they have relations. It starts off, it says, if a man takes a wife and ba'eleha, which generally means has relations with her, and then he despises her, and then he decides to spread these rumors about her. Now, it also says, right, he says, I went, we have relations, I didn't find her betulim, I saw she wasn't a virgin. And then what happens is it doesn't really say this in the verse. But what seems to be clear, and we'll see this in today's daf, that then the next step was, we talked about witnesses. So, and I might have explained this not fully correctly the other day. Now I have a much better grasp on it, which is the first stage is he doesn't find her betulim, right? He sees she's not a virgin, but the next stage is he then goes and needs to find witnesses to prove that she was with somebody from the time of the betrothal. Because again, if she was with someone before the betrothal, then it's just an issue of the ketubah money, how much he owes her. Some people claim, there's a machloket about this, that he can just, we saw this earlier in the Masechet, he can claim it was a mekach ta'ud and get out of the marriage entirely. But she certainly wouldn't get stoned in that case. But the case where she's going to get stoned is obviously if he provides witnesses that she had been with someone during the interim. The other thing that became clear is that what there was a custom. And as I was trying to figure out what is this sheet and how can they prove it from the sheet, they could pull out any sheet. So what seems to happen is, again, it's hard to imagine them really doing this, but a couple would get married, first night, they would go into a room, there would be witnesses outside the room, they would check what the woman brought into the room, that she didn't bring in any dirty clothes that have blood stains on them, that the man didn't bring in any extra sheet, and there's only one sheet. So if the sheet comes out with blood, it's obviously that sheet. If the sheet comes out without blood, it's obviously that sheet, okay? And then each one can then bring, in other words, if the sheet is bloody, then she's going to keep it to use for proof. If the sheet is not bloody, he's going to keep it to use it against her. And then when they walk out of the room, it's clear that they only have on them, right? And it's clear, maybe the witnesses actually only checked the room before. That makes also more sense, just to make sure there was nothing else there. And then, but I guess they see what they walked out with, and then that could be used as evidence potentially later. Again, to imagine that every marriage had this because there was a concern of what might happen, again, it's hard to know the reality. So again, there have to be a few things happening, okay? And then the big question in our mission is it definite that he actually had relations with her? They together had relations or not? So the rabbis say it doesn't make a difference, okay? So the first version was, right, Hamotzi Shemra lo kev enote me'asela, no matter what. Rabbi Yehuda says, the lashes are no matter what, but the me'asela, the penalty, remember, he gets two penalties. One is the lashes, we'll see where they learn that from today, and one is he pays the money. So that, the money is only if he had relations with her. In the second version, the rabbi said, Hamotzi Shemra lo kev enote me'asela, Bain Baal, Bain Shalo Baal. I'm sorry, that was the first version, right? So then they explain that the rabbis held whether or not, it doesn't matter. The second version was that then the rabbis fell in line with the rabbi's opinion, the Tanakhama fell in line with the rabbis, and Rabbi Yehuda falls in with Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov, who said that the psukim are specifically Baal, and therefore, if he didn't have relations with her, Baal is to have intercourse. If he didn't, then it's not. Right? We don't hold that way. The lashes, we said, was a separate thing, which is specifically because of lo telech rachil ba'amecha. By the way, the Rashi points out, just so you wouldn't think, well, normally lo telech rachil is something that's done with your mouth, and normally it's called a lav she'en bo ma'aseh. There's no action, it's just words. How can you get lashes? Well, Rabbi Yehuda actually holds that even in a lav she'en bo ma'aseh, you do get lashes. The basic sugya in makot that generally we don't, but Rabbi Yehuda disagrees, and that fits in perfectly with what he's saying. That's why you get lashes for lo telech rachil. Comes the second version and said, no, they all agree with Rav Eliezer ben Yaakov. There has to be this intercourse of the couple before, but, right, and then the rabbi said, take him across the board. Loke en note me'asela, and Rabbi Yehuda distinguishes, Rabbi Yehuda holds the same, between lashes and not lashes, lashes and the money. Now the Gemara says, wait a minute, according to both versions, Rabbi Yehuda lo kemi kolakom, he's going to get lashes no matter what. Meaning, again, if he lied, right? What does it mean if he lied? If he lied means, again, based on what I said earlier, if he goes and he claims shoot to Nebutulim, he searches, finds witnesses, and then it turns out those witnesses were false witnesses, then he's going to be punished. So now it says, didn't Rabbi Yehuda say Ba'al lokeh, lo Ba'al no lokeh? Wait, Rabbi Yehuda distinguished also with the lashes. So we have one answer, which Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak said, lokeh makar Rabbanan. It's only on a rabbinic level. Rav Papa Amar, my Ba'al lokeh dekatani hatam, mamon. When it said Ba'al lokeh, lo Ba'al no lokeh, what he meant is the money is going to depend on whether he had intercourse or didn't have intercourse. And in the source where it said, lokeh, right, no matter what, he'll get lashes, that's referring to getting lashes. Okay, so now, meaning no matter what, he's going to get lashes. When it said lokeh, no lokeh, depending on whether he had relations or not, that's all a matter of the money. Okay, now how can you say, you might be wondering, what do you mean? You say lokeh, lokeh when you mean you pay money, you don't pay money? It's lashes. Karile lamama malkot, who calls money lashes? To which he says, in Vahatanya, it says in a Braita, it should be Tanya Natnan. Haomer, now here we're going into a totally different case, but we're going to see where they call paying money lokeh. Haomer chatzi erki alai. We talked about erchi not so long ago. You give the value of a person. So if you say I'm giving half of my value, half of the value of myself, okay, noten chatzi erko, you give half your value. Okay, if you're a woman and you're worth 30 shkalim, you give 15. Rabbi Yehuda Omer lokeh v'noten erech shalem. So literally this means you get lashes and you pay the full value, the 30. So the Gemara says, lokeh amai, why on earth would you be getting lashes for this? This isn't something you get lashes for saying, I'm giving half my value. Amar Rav Papa, lokeh be'erech shalem. Notice this Rav Papa also. Lokeh be'erech shalem means you get, say it, maybe the best translation would be you got smitten with, right? Hit with, you got hit over the head with a monetary payment. What is that monetary payment? You have to pay the full value. My time. So what's the reason? At this point, we've already established malkot could mean paying money, and that goes back to what Rav Papa said. Now, right, what Rav Papa said previously, this Rav Papa fits in with that Rav Papa. My timer, what's the reason with the chatzi or ko'alai? If I say I'm giving half my value, why do I have to give the full value of myself? Gzera chatzi or ko atu erech chatzio. You can see why these two things might get confusing. Chatzi or ko means half my value, and erech chatzio means the value of half of me. Okay, meaning I'm giving half of me to the temple. So now, erech chatzio. If you cut your body in half, okay, if I say I'm giving half my value, I'm saying my value is X, right? It's 30. I'm giving half of it, that's 15. That makes perfect sense. However, the rabbis insisted in that case that you pay full value so that I don't come to confuse it with a different case. What's the other case? If I say I'm giving half of my body to the temple, half of me to the temple, erech chatzio, the value of half my body. It's different than saying my whole value, but half of it. I'm saying the value of half my body. Now, what's half my body worth? If you cut me in half, I'll be dead, right? There's no such thing as half my body. I can't live without half my body. So half my body actually means my whole body, because my whole body is dependent on half of my body, in which case you've basically given your whole value to the temple. So that we don't confuse those two terms, the Braita says, according to Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, if you say I'm giving half of my value, we make you pay the whole value so that you don't confuse it with I'm giving the value of half my body, which you can't do. So that was an aside just to prove Malko could be money. Now back to our topic. Tanu Rabbanat. Now we're going to get to how do we know there's money and there's lashes. Va'anshu oto. Okay, the pasuk, let's just read the psukim for a minute. The ziknei ha'irahu, take this man after they find out he's lied. V'yisru oto. We're going to explain yisru oto in a minute to mean lashes. The next verse is Va'anshu oto me'akesef. We're in Deuteronomy 23, 18 and 19. Va'anshu oto me'akesef, and they punish him with 100 kesef. Anshu oto ze mama. Punishment, that's mama. V'yisru ze malko. That's lashes. How do we know it's lashes? We're going to see in a minute. Bishlam avanshu zo mamon. Okay, that's very easy because dichtiv anshu oto me'akesef v'natan lavi ha'ne'ara. It describes right after the words v'anshu oto that he has to pay money. Ela v'yisru ze malko minala. Where do we get the v'yisru? It's lashes. Amar Rabbi Abau lamanu. We're going to have another gzera shava like we did, I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago, which was one from that from that from that. Okay, v'yisru. Sorry, lamadu yisru mi yisru. Yisru also appears by the wayward son, the ben sorel umore, and yisru mi ben. Where it says yisru by the ben sorel umore, it also says ben because of ben sorel umore, son. Uben mi bin, and the word ben is like the word bin; it's spelled the same way. And we're going to make a gzera shava to the pasuk v'haya im bin hakot harasha, which is the pasuk that we use to teach us about lashes. Right, when you hit the person who gets lashes, right, you hit him 40, not more than that. So what do we learn from here? Yisru to yisru, yisru to ben to bin. And from there we get bin is lashes. So therefore yisru is also lashes. Now they want to know, okay, we get lashes, but you don't ever get lashes for anything unless the Torah warned you somewhere that you're not allowed to do this. Now the Torah describes what happens if you do this, but they never said, don't do this. You need a lo taseh to associate it with a negative commandment. So, ashara lemotzi shem raminalam. Where is the warning for this halacha? Rabbi Elazar amar mi lo telech achil. He says it's from don't go telling, right, gossiping about people, right? This is part of gossiping. Okay, rechilut is usually not negative necessarily. It's just talking about other people. But in this case, it was negative, right? It obviously includes negative as well. And therefore, it comes from there. And that we talked about yesterday. Rabbi Natan Omer, mi v'nishmarta michol davar ra, says, keep away from any bad thing. Okay, now, what's important to know is the context of this verse, both these verses. We'll get to Lo Telech Rachel in a minute. But the context of this verse is keep away from any bad thing. Okay, actually, we'll get to the context in 1 minute. How do they understand it? Davar ra, dibur ra, bad speech. Okay, from here they learn about bad speech. So we have 2 different options. Why doesn't each one hold like the other? And here we're going to see where the context is important. Rabbi Elazar, my time alo amar mehai. Why didn't he learn it from mi nishmarta mikol davar ra? Keep away from any bad thing. Because he needed that for a different halacha. Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair. As Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair said, mi nishmarta michol davar ra. Mikan amar Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair. Al yaharher adam bayom v'yavo lidei tuma balayla. Don't think thoughts during the day that are going to cause you to have seminal emission at night. Okay, seems out of the blue, but it's not, because if we look at the context there, the next verse is and talking about tumat keri, which is seminal emissions, and the impurity it carries with it. So therefore, they connect between the 2 verses, and that's where Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair assumed that this has to do with that. For Rabbi Natsa, my time alo amar mehai. Why didn't he learn it from lo telech rachil? Don't gossip. He understands it as a commandment to judges not to be soft to one person and harsh to another. You look in the context there, it's in Vayikra chapter 19, verse 16. Don't stand by your, right, when someone is dying and don't do anything. Ani Hashem. So maybe from here, they want you to know, again, we've always understood to mean gossip, but here this is taken a little bit out of the simple reading, and it's meant to say, right, this is something that could cause the death of others, maybe, right, which is judging people incorrectly. It's very severe, And maybe that's why they thought that this verse was referring to that. Next situation. Lo amar la'edim bo v'hiduni. If he didn't call witnesses himself, remember we described, finds out his wife's not a virgin because he doesn't see any blood. So now he wants to figure out from when is she not a virgin. So he goes to find witnesses and he brings forward witnesses. What if he didn't say to witnesses, come and testify? He accuses his wife, but he doesn't have any proof. Two witnesses show up in court. They heard what was going on and they testify about her. In this case, since his accusation had no basis on his own and other witnesses just came forward, it's not his doing that if they lied, it's not his doing that they lied. But however, in that case, even though we said the Motzi Shemer case, right, there's two endings to the story. Either he was lying or she was lying. So if in fact it goes forward and she turns out to be the one lying, he accused her, the witnesses came forward on their own, well then, that means she goes to get stoned, and not only that, but obviously if these witnesses came on their own, without the husband, of course they're going to get stoned as well. They're going to get stoned either which way, because they lied in court and tried to convict someone of stoning, and they were liars, so they get stoning as well. So again, the Gemara is going to ask, because the language is strange, we had this already a few times, it can't be she and the false witnesses, it's either or, to which the Gemara obviously answers, it's either or. Either she or the Zomimim go get stoned. So now they want to point out this one issue here, or not an issue, but something you can infer from here. Ta'ama delo amar lehu. The whole thing is, did he tell witnesses to come forward? Ha amar lehu. What if he just told witnesses? Afagav delo agrinu, but he didn't hire witnesses. Okay, it sounds like if he didn't hire witnesses, right, he's still going to be convicted. You don't need to hire witnesses in order to get convicted. You just need to ask witnesses to come forward. Well, you're thinking, why is this important? Obviously, what's the difference? Well, Rabbi Yehuda omer eno chayav ad sheyizkor edim. Rabbi Yehuda says you actually have to hire the witnesses in order to be obligated. Okay, meaning again, if you hire witnesses and then they lied, then you'll have to pay the knas and the lashes. But if you just said to witnesses to come forward to testify, you're not going to be obligated. Obviously, the rabbis disagree with this. I'm like, what do you mean? You brought forth witnesses. What's the difference if you hired them or not? It's actually a whole question about whether you can even hire witnesses, or hire witnesses just by definition going to be disqualified, because if you're right, why are witnesses getting paid to come forward and testify? Anyway, that's a whole separate question that the Achronim deal with. My time to Rabbi Yehuda. So what's the reason for Rabbi Yehuda here? I'm a Rabbi Aval. Right? Where does he get that you have to hire them? Atya sima. Ktiv hacha v'sam la alilot varim. Okay, using the word sam. And right, this is the beginning of the section. He marries a woman. He has relations with her, and then he hates her, and then he creates a whole, right, he frames her basically. Uktiv hatam lo tesimun alav neshech. Now, where else does sam come in? When it talks about interest, don't take interest payments. Malahala mamon, afka mamon. Just like here it's money, there it's also money. It's just like by borrowing. It's when you borrow money, right? When you lend money, interest is by lending on interest. Also here it's money. He's going to say the exact same thing we just saw. Okay. Also, he's going to learn from Sima that it's only money. By Rabbi Yirmiyah. Rabbi Yirmiyah now asks the following question. What if you hire them for land and not for money? Now, interest generally is not on land. If you lend out land on interest, not money, but not cash, but you lend out land, there's no interest. Now, it happens rabbinic, there's a debate. Anyway, we're not going to get into that right now, but the basic law of interest is money. So what if you hire them with land? This is classic Rabbi Yirmiyah. Likes to ask these nitpicky questions. Okay, often we don't have answers here. They're not even going to say teku. They're just not going to answer the question. What if he hired them out for less than the value of a coin? Or what if what if he hired them, the two of them, for one coin, meaning each got half a coin only? Do we view it as one transaction, or do we view it as two separate transactions? And then each one is for less than a pruta. And again, there's no interest on anything less than a pruta. So what would be the situation? No answer. By Rav Ashi, he asked two questions, which we'll get an answer to one of them. What if he marries a woman and then later divorces her and then remarries her? And then he comes after the second marriage and says, you know what? From the beginning, she wasn't a virgin. And I just, didn't mention it until now. So what's the halacha? What if the husband dies and they have no children and the brother does yibum, and then he claims, when she was married to my brother, she wasn't a virgin. At least one of these we have an answer to. Ditani Rabbi Yonah, he brought a brayta that said, I gave my daughter to this man. What do we learn from here? Right, that's what the father says. When he comes claiming she is a virgin, he says, I gave my daughter to this man. We're going to see this verse later today. To this man, meaning not the whole Motzi Shemra case doesn't work if you're not the person that the father gave him to in marriage. And therefore, right, clearly there he wouldn't be obligated. My Rabbananu, my Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. So we started today's daf with this reference, this machloka between Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov and the rabbis about whether he has to have had intercourse with her in order for all these things to happen. Again, they can happen. He can accuse her, but if he hasn't had intercourse, then all the punishments wouldn't apply or not. So again, or maybe some of the punishments. That was the whole, also part of the debate. Dear Tanya, as it says in a brayta, so they want to know who are the rabbis and who are Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov that we made reference to. So it says in a brayta, how does Hotza'at Shem Ra work? Somebody comes to court and says, Ploni, so-and-so, he says to the father, right, addresses the father as Ploni, right, whatever your name is. I did not find her to be a virgin. If he has witnesses that she slept with someone when she was already betrothed to him, she drops her ksuba down to a maneh because it's clear she wasn't a virgin. Now, the Gemara says, what are you talking about? First of all, she was a virgin when she got betrothed in that case. And number two, much more, so she's going to get killed. Remember, she had adulterous relationship. She gets stoned. So the Gemara says, no way, no how. But she's supposed to get killed. To which the Gemara says, this is the way you should read the bride. If there's witnesses that she slept with someone else while she was married to him, betrothed, then beskila, then she gets stoned. But zintami ikara. But if it turns out she had been with someone before she was even betrothed, then she doesn't get skila, and yesh la ktuba maneh, and then her ktuba drops down to 100. And again, I mentioned this is a subject of debate. Some people say you can claim, I don't owe you anything, and this was a mistake because I married you under a certain premise and it wasn't true. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer lo ne'emru dvarim halalu ela k'sheba'al. Says this is only if he had relations with her once they got married. To which the Gemara says, and now you're going to see a huge, right? Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov is really the simple reading. So we're going to go through many, many verses in the section and say this fits very well with Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, but how are the rabbis going to explain it? If they think bein ba'al, bein shelo ba'al, right? Did I skip something? I skipped a line. Sorry, I skipped an important line. Nimtza, going back before Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, Nimtza sheshem ra eino shem ra. If it turns out, got confused. Nimtza means if it turns out that the shem ra that he claimed was a shem ra, right? What he thought, this was all first track, we explained according to Tanakama. Again, let's just go back for a quick minute because I got out of order and now it's confusing. Okay, so from the beginning it says, right, if, or again, the rereading of Tanakama is, if there's witnesses that she slept with someone while she was betrothed to him, then she gets stoned. If the witnesses say it was before, then her ketubah drops down. If it turns out, option number 3, if it turns out Shemra Eino Shemra, that he was a total liar and it wasn't true, and the witnesses he brought turned out to be Zomimim, Hulo Kevin Otemea Sela, Bein Baal, Bein Lo Baal. He gets lashes and he pays 100 Sela, whether or not he had in fact had relations with her once they got married. Then comes Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Sorry for doing this out of order, that I messed it up. But lo ne'emru dvarim halalu ela k'sheba'al. The the knas, right, the money and the lashes is only if he had relations with her. So now the Gemara is going to say, Bishlam ala Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, again, the debate between them is specifically in the track of if it turns out he was lying. Bishlam ala Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov hainu dichtiv, lo matzati li bitcha betulim. In the Torah it says, he said to her, I did not find your daughter to be a virgin. How would he have known that if he didn't have relations with her? So according to the rabbis, where it includes even a case where he didn't have relations with her, how on earth did he know that? I didn't find anyone to clear her name, meaning I found witnesses that said she slept with someone, and I couldn't find witnesses to undo their testimony. Remember, according to the Torah, he pulls out and he says, these are the betulim of my daughter. So that makes perfect sense if they have relations. Ela l'Rabbanit, my ela betulei biti. But according to the rabbis, what is, these are the betulim of my daughter? They didn't have relations. Ela k'sherei betulei biti. What he's pulling out is the witnesses that are going to knock out the other witnesses that the husband brought. Okay? And that's what it means. These are the people who are clearing her name. They put out the, literally means dress, but it doesn't. It really means the sheet. They pull out the sheet. Simla in the Torah could also mean a cloth or a covering or something like that. They pull out the sheet. What sheet is there if they didn't have relations? It's supposed to be the sheet that they slept on. Amar Rabbi Aval, Persu Masha Samla. They darshan it as they took out what he put on her. Okay, some people think it's simla, samla. Some people say, no, it's not. That's not the drasha here. It goes back to the beginning of the parsha, which it says there, who samla alilot dvarim. Okay, he made for her a case. He made this whole thing up. So now what they took out is masha samla. Okay, so now let's see. Kiditanya, how do they explain it? Upersua simla milamed sheba'in edim shalzeh ve'edim shalzeh. In other words, we have his side witnesses, and we have the other side's witnesses, the father's side, right? Daughter's side. What does that have to do with simla? They clarify the situation like a new dress. A new dress is clean, there's no stains, right? They figure out what's the real truth. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov omer dvarim kechtavan, simla mamash. He says it really means no, they actually took out the sheet. Okay, so that's the debate. So far we basically clarified, okay, until now we clarified really how to read this whole section, which really seemed to indicate that he was talking about actual intercourse he had with her, what the results were of the intercourse, whether he claims that, the father claims that. Now the rabbis have to understand it all a little bit differently. Shalach Rabbi Yitzchak bar Rav Yaakov bar Giuri mishmei Rabbi Yochanan. He sent the following thing in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, the following halacha. אף אגב דלא מצינו בכל התורה כולה שחילק הכתוב בין ביאה כדרכה לביאה שלא כדרכה למכות ולעונשים, אבל מוציא שם רע חלה. There's biah kedarka, biah shelo kedarka. Right? There's anal intercourse and regular intercourse. So the Torah never distinguishes between these when it's talking about, let's say, arayot. You have a sexual encounter with someone who's forbidden to you. It doesn't matter what kind of sexual encounter, whether it's kedarka, shelo kedarka, it's going to be a problem. But, right, you're going to get punished the same way. However, in motzi shemra, they distinguish. The question is how, and now we're going to read how, and then they're going to say that makes no sense, and then they're going to reread it. As we said, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says he has to have relations with her. So this seems to go in his line of thinking. Well, you're only chayav ad shiv'ol, only if you have relations with her shelo kedarka, anal intercourse, which doesn't really mean the way it sounds. What it means is even if it was anal, okay, so either way, he had relations with her in either which way. V'yotzi shemra kedarka. But he claims that she had regular sexual relations before, okay, with someone else. To which the Gemara says this doesn't make any sense. Kiman, like who does it go? Ikar Rabbanit. It's certainly not like the rabbis. Kis afagav de lo ba'al. Says you don't even have to have had the couple have intercourse in order to be obligated. Ikar Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, idividi kedarka b'inam. Well, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, remember, what was the whole thing? He has relations with her. Why is that important? Because that's what establishes his suspicion that she just remembered I skipped a line. 1 second. I'll get back there in a second. I don't know what's with me today. Skipping lines. Anyway, that's what established his suspicion, right? That he had relations with her and he found her not to be a virgin. If he had bia shelo kedarka, then there was no way he would have known she was not a virgin. So therefore, idividi kedarka bin. I'm going to finish here and then I'm going to go back and fix the line that I must have skipped somehow. Ela shalach Rav Kahana mishmei Rabbi Yochanan. Rav Kahana says, no, I'm going to tell you the way Rabbi Yochanan said it. I'll correct it. Eino chayav ad sheyivol kedarka v'yosi shem ra b'kedarka. It has to be both are kedarka. Both he have relations with her kedarka and she have relations with the first person. Because again, why is it important the first person is kedarka? Because that's how she lost her virginity. She wouldn't lose her virginity otherwise. So it has to be that she lost her virginity the first time, and then the second time he realized she was no longer a virgin. And that's why both have to be kedarka. This is an exception to the rule, because in other cases in the Torah, it doesn't make a difference. Okay, I skipped a line. There was a line. Okay, let's go back. In the first part about questioning Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, okay, I'm about 10 lines, 11 lines from the bottom. We said, Bishlamala Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, Tainu dichtiv uba'aleha. Let's skip this somehow. Ve'ekravela. It says in the beginning he had relations with her and he got close to her, okay? One is the Torah is describing. He makes a whole case and, right, first he marries a woman, he sleeps with her, ba'aleha, he has intercourse with her. Usually that's what it means. And hates her, and then he comes forward and he gives this whole story, and within that story he says, and I got close to her, which we also assume meant intercourse. But according to the rabbis, what is ba'ela ve'kavela, right? Because he thinks, even if you didn't have relations, he comes to her with suspicions, right? Like framing her. Okay, when he gets close to her, what does that mean? I had a conversation with her. That's in the first case, it meant I had an intercourse with her and I realized she wasn't a virgin. Here, because he thinks it could even include not when there was no intercourse, what he's saying is I spoke to her, and in the context of conversation, it raised my suspicions about her that maybe something had happened. Okay, sorry that I skipped that first one. The rest of them we did. Okay, new Mishnah. Ha'av zakai bebito bekidusha bekesef b'shtar ubebi'ah. The father, again, we're talking about a minor or a na'ara, okay, which is that in-between stage. Once she's a Bulgarian, she's on her own. But until that point, the father can betroth her. We're going to see even against her will, which is hard to swallow. But the father gets rights to the money of the kiddushin. Normally we get a ring, so he has rights to that. That's his. The shtar, if there's a document, okay, again, this is only when she's a minor. We don't really do this anymore. Vishtar with the document. He gets the document. There's 3 ways you can get betrothed. Kesef, shtar, or bi'ah, intercourse. We're going to see in a minute. Gam bebi'ah. What does it mean he's zakai bebi'ah? How could he have rights to the intercourse? It's actually a very hard thing to swallow. Rashi says, Rashai lemosra lebi'ah l'shem kiddushin. He could say, I'm giving my wife to betrothal to you, and you could do it with having intercourse with her. Very hard to imagine how the father could decide for the daughter she should have intercourse with this man in general. Well, betrothal basically sets her on a course. She's going to have intercourse with him, so maybe it's not so crazy once you accept that. I was just in Denver for Shabbat, and I met this wonderful person who's running a foundation about Golda Meir, and she talked about her early days were in Denver. When in 9th and 10th grade, she lived in Denver. How did she get to Denver? She fled Milwaukee from her parents because her parents wanted to marry her off at age 14. And she wanted to have none of that, and she had to run away from home. So if you think that this concept of parents trying to marry off their children is foreign, right, and is something from 2,000 years ago or some culture that whatever, right, here you see Golda Meir was growing up in a culture like that, where they basically wanted to, I don't know if they were going to do it for her, right, she was already 14 anyway, right, in terms of halachically, no, but they were actually trying to push it very strongly to the extent that she had to run away from home. So it's very interesting to see that, to think about that in light of what we're learning. Zakai b'mitziata u'v'masei adeh u'v'hafarat nedereh. We're now going to see all sorts of rights in addition to her kiddushin money, the betrothal money, and the document. And I don't know what the importance is that he has the document because he takes charge of it. Also, anything she finds goes to the father. Her masei adeh, her salary goes to the father. We've learned this before. And hafarat nedereh. And he can annul her vows. If she gets divorced from the betrothal, only from the betrothal, not from marriage. From marriage, she can't because she's already becomes her own. She's in charge of herself when she's married. But if she's not a bogeret yet, then he can accept, I'm sorry, if she wasn't married yet, but from the betrothal, he can accept the get on her behalf because the woman has to accept the get. So the father could do it on her behalf. But if she inherited property, let's say from her mother, had nothing to do with him, then she, like, let's say it was, right, her mother, that would be, yeah, somehow she could inherit. If her mother had property that wasn't her husband's, she could give it to the daughter. And then the father doesn't get the proceeds of that land. Okay, that land, all the proceeds, he kind of takes care of her because she's a minor, but he invests them for her. He invests them for her purposes. He can have. Niseit, once she gets married, yeter alav abal, the husband gets more rights than the father, which is what? She'ochel perot b'chayeha. All her property that she brings into the marriage, he gets all the proceeds. She gets it back, right, when the marriage is over. But while they're married, he gets the perot. These are the nichsei melog and the nichsei tzon barzel that we've discussed way back in Yavama. We're not going to get into it now. V'chayav b'mizonoteh, he has to feed her. Ubepir kona, he has to redeem her if she gets taken into captivity. Ukvuratan, he has to pay for her burial. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, we'll get to this later. Why is he, in what way does he disagree with Tanakama? Afilu, and not yet, not today's stuff. Afilu anisha b'Yisrael, even a poor person in Israel. This is the same language used in the first Mishnah of Arvei Pesachim, the 10th chapter of where it says Afilu anisha b'Yisrael lo yifchot me'arba kosot, can't have any less than 4 kosot. Even a poor person in Israel lo yifchot, it's the same language, can't do any less. Mishnei chalilim u'mekonenet. He has to bring to his wife's funeral at least 2 people playing the flute and a mikonenet, which were these women who sang lamentations. Okay, that's a whole cultural thing, right? We're going to talk about this more later. It's going to become clear that maybe it's if she's from a family that the husband's family normally does this and that's their custom, then he can't do any less for his wife. Anyway, that's we'll get to that later. Gemara, but kesef minalan. They want to know, where do we know that he gets the money for the kiddushin? So they're going to try one pasuk. It's not going to really work. They're going to try a different way, and then they're going to eventually go back to this first one. This is a strange pasuk. It's about a woman who gets sold as a maidservant. That's why it's a little strange. It's hard for us to imagine a father selling his daughter off to be a maidservant. What happens is basically if the father, the master or his son, or he wants to marry her off to his son, he can do that. And then they have to provide her with everything provided in a marriage. It says in the Torah there, he can't deprive her of those 3 things. So the 3 basic needs, we're going to get to them soon, so I'm not even going to talk about them right now. But those are 3 things that every husband provides for his wife. It says if he doesn't provide those things, like it says there, I think if I recall, it says if he takes another wife in addition to her, and then he doesn't provide her with those things, she goes free without him getting any money. So now they say, why do you have to say chinam and kesef? Chinam is free and kesef is no money. It's the same thing. They must be coming to teach you something additional. Ein kesef la'adon zeh, v'yesh kesef la'adon acher, umanu avia. There's no money for this master, but there is money given to someone else who's in a similar situation. Who's that? The father, when his daughter leaves him, he can get the money. Okay, whereas the Adon doesn't get the money when she leaves, but the father does. It's not exactly a fair comparison. One is leaving to get married and one is leaving from a marriage, but they're comparing. To which the Gemara says, Ve'ema l'dida. Why are you assuming Yatzach chinam ein kasef means he doesn't get money, right? In other words, the master, it's clear the master doesn't get the money. But in the case where she leaves her father, there is money. The question is, who gets the money? Maybe it's her who gets the money, maybe not the father. So for this, the Gemara has to basically try to come up with something else. Well, first answer is, it's obvious he gets the money. He's the one who gave her off in marriage. He betrothed her because it says, I gave in the Motzi Shemra. It says, I gave my daughter to this man. So it doesn't make sense that she would get the money. To which they say, well, maybe that's only to a minor who doesn't have a hand. She doesn't have knowledge. She can't accept it, money. Maybe if she's already a nara, maybe she has a yad, so maybe she should get the money. And, right, it's hers, since she has a way to get money. So you could say Bitina Tatil Ish Hazeh is only when she's a minor, but if she's already older, she's in that in-between stage of Nara, maybe she should get her own Kesef Kiddushin. To which they answer a different answer then. Amakha bin Urea Beit Avia. We learned this the other day, right? It says this is about annulling vows when she's in her stage of Na'arut, in the house of her father. From here they learn Kol Shevach Neurim Lavia. All her possessions that she has, then everything she makes goes to her father. So that's why it goes to the father. To which the Gemara says, you can't learn from that pasuk. And if you remember, we said this when we had this, we had it on Daf Mem. We said the exact same thing, which is, if we learn Minurah Beit Avia is everything of hers goes to the father, well, Rav Huna says in the name of Rav, how do you know her father gets her salary? Again, we're back to the maidservant. When the father sells his daughter to be a maidservant, we're going to deal with the juxtaposition between daughter and maidservant. Ma'ama, so we're going to learn the same thing is true for each. Just like the maidservant, her proceeds go to the master. Likewise, her go to the father. So Lamali, why do we need that? If we have that other verse, we don't need this one. The reason is because that pasuk b'nurah can't be used to teach kol shevach nurim la'avia, because that pasuk is talking about annulling vows, and therefore you can't learn from it. Maybe you'll say we can learn from there. We don't learn money issues, like in other words, right now we're talking about the salary issue. Her salary doesn't go to her father. Her salary going to the father can't be learned from Afarat Nedarim because that's money. And Afarat Nedarim is Isur V'Ater. It's things that are forbidden and permitted. That's a whole different realm. Can't learn one from the other. Maybe the Mammon issue of the salary should be learned from the Knas, just like the father gets the fine when it comes to the rape and the seduction, right? Why don't we learn it to Mammon? We don't learn it from there. But Boshet and Pagam go to the father, and that's Mammon. Shani Boshet Pagam de Avia Nami Shayach. As we saw before, the father is responsible for her Boshet and Pagam. He's in control of it because he can actually embarrass her if he wanted by marrying her off to someone she doesn't want to marry. That's embarrassing to her, and therefore the Boshet and the Pagam of her go to her father, and that's why the father gets it. In any case, we can't learn bin ureha that all shevach of hers go to the father. So still we're back with why does the kesef kiddushin go to the father? Go back to the first pasuk. When it said she leaves ein kasef, she leaves the master, she doesn't get money. It must be that when the Torah tried to say, but someone else gets money, it must be in the exact same manner. Father is analogous to the master. So therefore, right, that's why. So again, she goes out from the master. He doesn't get money, but she leaves her father to go get married. He gets the money. But wait, it's not the same thing. When she leaves the master, she leaves him entirely. She has no more connection to him. But here we're talking about the betrothal. In the betrothal, she's still connected to her father. She's still in his house. She's still, right, all sorts of ways she's connected to him. So only with the marriage does she disconnect from him entirely. So therefore, it's not a fair comparison. To which the Gemara says, at least regarding one issue, she does leave him, which is he can no longer annul her vows like he could before. That's enough to say she's leaving his domain. It's not, as it says in the Mishnah, Nara Murasa, if she's betrothed, Avia Uba Alam, if you remember, both her father and her husband have to annul her vows together. The father doesn't have the power to do it on his own. So in that way, she leaves her father's domain sublet. So in the end, we learn it from where we started and could have ignored all those other options along the way. Shtar ubi aminale, last thing for today. How do we know he gets the shtar? And he can basically take upon a betrothal for her through by saying you're going to be betrothed to this man through having intercourse. Well, Amar Krabai Tali Ishachel. This is the pasuk talking about when a woman gets married and then divorced, and then she goes and is with another man. She can't go back to her original husband. Well, it says V'haita. She gets betrothed to another man. From here, they say this seems to include any method of betrothal. That means that all the methods of betrothal are compared to each other. So if something is true for one, it's going to be true for all three. And that's how we get to the first line. That was explaining basically the first line of today's Mishnah. We will continue to understand the Mishnah better in tomorrow's Shiur. Have a great day, everybody.